We good? Okay.
Yeah,
so we'll give this a second for a few people to tune in, and then we're still getting TikTok going, right?
Yeah.
You're still getting TikTok going, so just make sure that the light is up all the way and that the volume is up on the side as well. Okay, so we're going to give this a second. So tell me the title of the book again.
A Prisoner's Humanity.
Prisoner's Humanity.
It's a white cover and white back, and it's just the color is just like the red heart, just two red hearts with a line connecting with like the heart for the you, and then the heart over the person who's in the cell.
Oh, so beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to read it. Okay, we are, it looks like we have TikTok going, if that's accurate. Is my microphone working?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, and then it looks like we have YouTube going as well. So welcome everyone who's tuning in. If you guys could give us a thumbs up, let us know that the audio and the video is actually working. We want to make sure we have both up and running before we go ahead and get started. For those of you tuning in this week to church, you may have missed last week. This is a two-part series. We're talking about ego tonight. So if this is something that you need for your own self, or maybe you deal with somebody else who has a lot of ego problems, and this is going to be helpful for you. But, you know, we really do think here at the Ivy League Psychic Academy and Roots Revival Interfaith Church, we think of ego as being really more about fear, being fear-based, making choices, and having feelings and thoughts from a toxic, lower level negative place, versus traditional concepts of ego, which are more about having a hoity-toity I'm better than you attitude, although that is part of it, and we will get into that. But again, while we let some people tune in here, I do want to explain this is part 2 of the ego series. So if you guys weren't with us at church last week, we did ego part 1 and discussed what exactly ego is and how it may negatively be affecting your life. So if you missed it, you can go here on YouTube at Ask Ivy in the playlist for Roots Revival Interfaith and just click and rewatch from last week. Every service that we do is also available anywhere that you receive a podcast. So you can go back and rewatch there as well. And today is ego part 2. What can you do about it? Okay, different ways to bring solution to ego issues. All right, do we have a thumbs up that we have audio and volume here on YouTube? Mm-hmm. And do we have a thumbs up here on TikTok? Mm-hmm. All right, very good. So welcome everyone. I want to explain a little bit about who we are. So I am your pastor, Ivy Rivera, psychic medium, Taino Arawak, founder of Roots Revival Interfaith. We have with us our Reverend Danny Johnson, our numerologist here at the Ivy League Psychic Academy, and Paul Casey, Healing Arts, also a teacher at the Ivy League Psychic Academy. Again, today we are doing ego part 2 of the series. If you missed last week where we talked about what ego is and how it may negatively be affecting your life, you can go back and rewatch that here on YouTube at Ask Ivy or anywhere that you receive a podcast. Today, ego part 2. What can you do about it? I want to break down a couple key things that I believe has help my students, myself, my clients, and then we're going to hear from Reverend Danny, Reverend Paul, but also I encourage you guys to be involved in the church service every week by posting your questions, your comments, and feel free to leave a donation as well. Always greatly appreciated. I also want to encourage you to post your healing or prayer requests. Now, at about the halfway mark through church service, we'll be taking some time to go over those, but it's not too early to go ahead and post. All right, so let's go ahead and just dive right in. Last night, I want to say maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, one of my neighbors or a friend of my neighbors, I'm not sure, someone pulled in to our parking lot here at our townhouses, drunk as a skunk, tried to squeeze into a parking lot where he was never going to fit, smashed up the car on the side of him where he tried to angle in, and then bashed into the cars in front of him. So I heard it before I saw it. I go, running to the window, trapped in COVID for a year. Like, this is the most excitement I've seen, sadly, right, for a long time. And I stayed at the window and watched this entire scene play out, where this guy in a drunken state battled his ego. And it occurred to me immediately why I was watching this play out. This gentleman couldn't figure out how to pull his car back out of the front from the vehicle before him because it was stuck at this point. There was damage done. So when he finally figured out how to pull his car back out and detach, it made a ton of noise, crunching, and deterioration set in. He turned his car off. He turned his car on. He turned it back off. He couldn't figure out how to work the vehicle. He got out. He circled around a few times, and I saw him debate. I saw him think about what he should do. And at that point, he stopped and he started to look around to see if anyone saw. How many of us do this? Will I get caught? Will someone force me to hold myself accountable for my actions? Or can I get away with this because no one's looking? And he couldn't tell, it appeared, whether or not anyone was watching him. So he spent a little more time playing around, as so many of us do when we're battling our ego. He wasted time. He opened his trunk. He looked inside. He closed it. He opened his trunk again. He closed it. He eventually went over to the passenger side of his vehicle, and it appeared that he got in and hid. And yeah. So it was very interesting, right? It also made me confront my own ego. Am I going to come from a place of fear where I don't want to get involved in all this jazz? It's 3:00 in the morning. I have a lot going on in my own life. I have to get up and do church tomorrow, or am I going to come from a place of love and accountability and responsibility? And am I going to put myself in other people's position here? Would I want to know if some drunk guy came and smashed into my vehicle and left it like that in the middle of the night? What was I to do? And so we did the right thing, and we did, call in the police to at least do a crime report on the damage done to the other vehicles. And also I had a concern it was very cold. If this guy was still sleeping in his car, was he going to be safe? And so I did what was right, even though my natural instinct was to go in the opposite direction and not get involved. Okay, so I think this is always timely to see what comes up in our daily lives as we're confronting some type of an ego issue. So let's talk about a couple key things. Let's break down just even that scenario alone, okay? First of all, if you want to properly deal with your ego, which is ultimately about fear, control, manipulation, low-level energy versus high-level vibration energy. If we want to adequately deal with it, we need to not be lazy. That's simple. I don't need to say anything else about that, okay? Address it, do what's right, even if it is time-consuming or it's going to require a lot of your energy and attention. Do what's right and don't be lazy. Number 2, you need to ask yourself at all times, am I being mindful and am I holding myself accountable for my choices, for my thoughts, for my actions? And if you can answer yes, then you need to let go and stop worrying about your ego quite as much. We do live in a society that's become sort of ego obsessed. And I think we think about it too much. We talk about it too much. We believe that it's going to be a block to our spiritual development, when in actuality, it's always been there. and it's going to be a block to everything in your development. It's definitely going to hold back your prosperity. It's going to deteriorate your health and wellness. It's going to eat up your relationships. It's not just about spiritual development. We have to watch in the day to day, moment to moment, whether or not we're being mindful and we're holding ourselves accountable. And if you can answer that properly, you should be able to relax. I want to talk about number 3. Are you choosing love over fear? If you are staying more connected to your spirit guides, your higher mind, your ancestors, God, the universe, the saints, the angels, you should find it easier to come from a place of love versus fear. And if you are thinking negatively on something, or you have a really difficult decision to make, you're having a lot of disruptive emotions, the first thing you should really do is stop and ask yourself that question. Am I coming from a place of love, which is faith, which is positivity, which is connectedness to universal law, or fear, which is control, ego, manipulation, and choose love? Okay, call in your helpers for that. That's why we have guides, ancestors, angels here to help us. I also have a free mini class up here on YouTube at Ask Ivy. Go to the playlist. Paul will put that in the comments for you guys. It's called Love versus Fear. Okay, we have another one that goes hand in hand called How to Check Your Ego in light work and in your everyday life. Okay, so let's talk about number 4. What can you do? Don't be afraid to do the shadow work. We just put out a brilliant shadow work series here on Roots Revival Interfaith. Go through the playlist and listen to the weekly services. Shadow work is being willing to go inward and process the pain, the trauma, the discomfort, instead of hiding and running from it. The more shadow work you're willing to do, the less ego you're ever going to have to worry about. Doing the shadow work really kind of fixes itself in a lot of ways. Okay, Paul can also put that mini class information in the comments for that. Be of service. Okay, number 5, be of service through unconditional love to others. What is unconditional love? It's not expecting to have someone pay you back. It's doing something right or doing something good for others because you are being of service to the light. The more of service you are to the light every day, the less you have to worry about ego taking over you and coming from a toxic, low-level place. So be of service and give more from a place of unconditional love. Number 6, for the love of God, people, if you hear nothing else today, it's this one, okay? Whether you're a parent, you're an activist, you're a doctor, you need to know your calling and stay in your lane. Paul put that mini class in the comments. You need to understand, first of all, why you came to Earth and what you're here to do. Once you really understand that you're on the right path, it is easier for you to stay in your lane. People who are well-intentioned every day burn out because they're pushed and they're pulled and they feel guilted into things, and they maybe have a good heart or they have perfectionistic issues, but they want to do what's right. And sometimes what's right for someone else to do is not at all what's right for you to do. You have to understand what your part is in the work you came to Earth to do and stay there. That's how we avoid ego issues. Right now, I want to talk about the biggest one here. Watch for offense. When it's time for you to be corrected, whether it come from the universe or somebody else, or you fail in a situation, instead of being offensive and attacking and blaming whoever the messenger is, why don't you stop and actually analyze yourself and say, oh, wow, I wanted to work on my ego, or it's time for me to work on my ego. This is an opportunity for me to do so and see how I can improve upon myself. The biggest issue I see with students or clients who come to me on the regular is that so many of them come in for a reading or they come in for classes, but every time I let them know how they can correct it, they get angry with me. And I think, you know what? Someone coming from a place of offense has no business wasting their money or time here. That's the first thing you have to let go of. You have to be willing to be open and receive. You have to be willing to let your judgment go on your own self. You're not good or bad. You're both. We all are. And at any point, you could choose high or low. We need to start going high. Okay, so those are just a couple key things I think people can focus on. Who wants to open up here to discussion? Danny or Paul, who wants to go next? Also, you guys feel free to start posting your questions, comments, and healing requests here.
Ivy, I so appreciate you lifting up the importance of being open and being willing to accept openly and gratefully when like constructive feedback, constructive criticism, like that, how we grow. And ironically, I know that I've spoken about him often, both in many spaces that we are both in. My professor and mentor, who actually in spirit sent me to you, he always used to say that, and he was brilliant, and he said, brilliant both intellectually, but just in spirit, just such a great soul. He always would say, kind of like you, which is why I think he sent me to you. But the thing that he said was that you can have two equally brilliant people. The differentiating factor between the one who will be able to sustain and have longevity and make it versus the one who might not is their ability to take criticism. Yeah. Are they, when they receive that criticism, are they going to fold? Are they going to get upset? Are they going to retreat and not come back? Or are they going to take the criticism, appreciate it, and allow for it to transform them and make them better? And he often would say that sometimes even the student who, or person, but I think he was specifically speaking about students who one could be even a little bit more brilliant, a little bit more talented than the other. But if they're unwilling to take that criticism, he said they're just going to be like a falling star. And they're just not going to be able to sustain. So I so appreciate you lifting that up.
So true. And I just want to say too, that's a big part of character development. You know, we could have two people who have the same amount of talent. They were blessed to come to earth with some kind of skill, but it's the one with the more stable character development who is always going to go, you know, further. I also want to say that the constructive criticism is not always going to come that way. So we have to learn to take all criticism, I think, at this point, especially in our society with technology. You know, people aren't perfect in their presentation. Some do stutter and some are even offensive. It doesn't necessarily mean that we should tune it all out. You know, there's a big difference between someone just attacking you from a place of ignorance or disrespect and someone just not giving the criticism super constructively, you know, and I think we have to turn it into constructive criticism and still ask, you know, did the universe send this to me one way or another? We can use everything one way or another. I love that.
Absolutely. And when thinking about and feeling, especially around the ego, one of the things that kind of came up in terms of us being able to transform and use what we have gone through for the good is to stop. And I think we spoke about this. We mentioned about this last week, and I think you may have even lifted this up in other spaces as well, but to stop villainizing the ego and making the ego out to be something that is negative and that something that needs to be shamed. Because what it seems like what happens is if there is something in us or something related to our ego that we might not necessarily be proud of, or something that we want to heal or move past, the fear and the shame, especially the shame of that particular aspect of ourselves, could then lead to more defensive actions and behaviors, what could then lead to more of that aspect of the ego that we may end up needing to heal. So just by not, I think I appreciate when you said not to, it's not good and it's not bad, it is. And this concept of healing, like healing from the things that we have gone through. One of the things that has been helpful for me in this journey is to feel gratitude for how ego has served me in the past in different situations. Because I think in our mini class, the Divine Feminine, and there's a mini class forgive me, the marginalized. I think
healing for minorities and marginalized.
Thank you.
That we did. Yeah, Paul, could you put those in the comments?
In those conversations, in both of those mini classes, when we spoke about, and I think for all of us who have, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but for anyone who is marginalized or who has been underrepresented, when entering into spaces, there sometimes is that feel or that need to show, I am good enough. I belong here. I have worked hard to earn my place here. And sometimes that means drawing upon parts of ourselves that in most other situations and most other circumstances might potentially be negative. But in that circumstance, in that space, it is, okay, I know that I've earned my place here. I know that I have worked hard. I deserve to be here just as much as anybody else. And even though people might be behaving, whether it be explicitly or implicitly, whether it's subtle or whether it's more overt, however they might be behaving in that way, I still deserve to be here. And all of us do. And when those moments happen, then asserting oneself or kind of pushing forward a little bit and being assertive and drawing a bit on that like aggressiveness that might not necessarily serve us in all circumstances, but in that particular circumstance could be helpful. But then at the same time, it's important to know when to put that sword down. And it's important to know when, once we decide to heal the parts of ourselves that previously had served us, it doesn't make that part of us bad. So there are certain parts of us that helped us to survive in spaces that really tried to potentially nullify us or silence us and make us irrelevant. Those aspects of our ego may have gotten us through and may have even helped us to get to the finish line in some ways. But then it's important for us to know, okay, once we're out of that survival mode and once we're out of those spaces where we feel as though we have to push really hard, then it's okay to say, this part of myself served me, but it's not serving me anymore. And it doesn't make it bad, and it doesn't make it evil, and it doesn't make it something that I should be ashamed of. It's something that I now can transform into something different, into something new. And
right.
That's
everything. And that's everything. Let's let the cat out, please. So one great aspect of that is being able to look at your ego as though it is an alert system to show you when and where it's time to sort of evolve, beyond that low level up to that high level. What else can you use it for? And so many times it's to help other people. It's to speak your voice. It's to lead. It is the ultimate goal in life is to come from going low into high in every aspect, whether it be your zodiac sign, it be a life lesson, it be an ego issue, it be the way you handle others in relationship, it be the way you self-talk. All of that is the same. And when we get stuck where you're talking about, when we get stuck in that defense mode, that survival, that fight or flight, it's so obvious that the ego was useful for us to protect ourselves. But we may see that law of attraction kicks in the universe and manifestation deteriorates. And it's like you're hustling all the time. It's like you're always pulling teeth. It's like you can't get ahead. And everything and everyone you attract to you is problematic. And you're constantly revisiting those offenses and those themes. This is an alert system saying you're done with this now. You've outgrown this. I think of the hermit crabs in Florida, and how they just leave a shell behind. And it's like, okay, that's it. That's the end of that. I have to go find something new. And I think that's what ego is all about. Not coming out of the shell, forever. You're never going to get rid of your ego. And that's become a hot topic in recent years. It's in spirituality and new age belief systems that I think is very foolish. We are having a human experience, spiritual creatures having a human experience. We're not supposed to kill the ego or eliminate the ego. We're supposed to use it as an opportunity to continuously level up. And that hermit crab isn't just going to go buck naked for the rest of its life, or it's going to get eaten by a seagull or whatever immediately. You know, it's just going to find a more comfortable shell. And I think too, when you said that, you know, we too often see it as like a judgmental thing. We want to pass judgment on ourselves, and that's only going to make it worse. That's just so true. And I think that every time we do that, we need to also take a look at why we're not being more loving with ourselves. Is it maybe some kind of blame that you were brainwashed into putting upon you? Society, your teachers, your parents, you know, who taught you to do that? To be kind of abusive with yourself that way? It is serious, and we do need to examine it. Good. Paul, did you have something you wanted to say on this too?
Yeah, just to play off of what Danny had said and what you had brought up, and to spoof on the Tom Cochrane song, life is a hallway, we'll say. So if you were to look at your past, like when Danny would say, hey, you were this at one point, you used it, but that's okay, and now you've changed. It's like, okay, so if your life is a hallway with like little concave things, right? And here are all your past instances that when you were going through this, but now it's a statue. Now it's a memorial. Now it's a piece of you that you can reference back and say, okay, well, I did do that, and this got me through it. So I don't have to be judgmental. It served its purpose. And so like each kind of event that happens in your life, you put a new statue up so that you can go back and look, and that they're not villainized, that that, or they'll serve its purpose for whatever memory it has to, and that you can see what the next spot is, so that your life is constantly evolving. It's I don't want to call it like a trophy room, but like that it's, more of a memorial to what was and what's coming up, so that you still see that there are spots there to grow into, but everything you've done is not thrown away. It's not in the trash or villainized or defaced. It's kind of honored, because even if it was bad and you did a bad thing, you are now doing the right thing and learning from it. And that's why it is the statue. It's not a living person anymore. It's been, transformed into something better. And, to keep referencing those things and like, keep healing from them. And like Danny said, if you don't heal from it, or you tend to, go the other, keep using that, keep living it, it just grows and gets worse and worse and worse instead of going the opposite direction. So, to keep them on display, but not active, and
why shouldn't we have a trophy room of our accomplishments? This is part of the thing is, my grandmother used to have a saying, and she handed this down generation to generation, this very, toxic matriarchal figure in my family. And it was SPS. And we were taught as kids, SPS. And I would hear it if one of my cousins was maybe proud of something they accomplished, or we heard someone in our social scene talking about something great that happened to them. And I would always ask, what is SPS? Self-praise stinks. And I found that growing up, people really didn't find that to be so odd. A lot of people had that mentality. And I was like, this isn't freakish. This doesn't strike anyone as really wrong. Just because she was bold enough to put a name and a title on it and shout it all the time from the rooftop doesn't mean we don't all sort of have that mentality. Where did that come from? We talk a lot here about generational curses. We have a free mini class on that. You check that out too. But why shouldn't we have a trophy room of the things that we have learned? We also, it helps us to remember, because in life, tests are often revisited. And should we ever backpedal on what we learned and we stop applying it because we've leveled up in some way, new people have entered into our lives, new circumstances have taken over, we can be retested and forget what we've learned or stop applying it. So it's good to reflect back on. I also think that right now where we are with the awakening, everybody wants some kind of a trophy, and they're looking for trophies and certifications. They're looking for trophies in the books that they read. They're looking for trophies in the trainings and the classes they took. They want to be able to go out and reteach others. But these are the real trophies. In these moments, when you choose high over low in your personal life, no one's ever going to see it but you, maybe. That's where the real growth is. It's so true. Well, I know we have questions and comments coming in. Danny, did you want to say something while we start looking at these?
Sure. So when thinking about and reflecting on the numerology, how numerology relates to the healing of the ego as well, that is definitely such a connection, because and I really just love how I think in our mediumship training, learning about life contracts was such a great preparation for my work in numerology, because life contracts so directly relate and connect with numerology charts, especially the pinnacle numbers and the period cycle numbers. Like the period cycle numbers are broken down into thirds, the first, second, and third portion of our lives, and show us who we're meant to grow into, where the pinnacle numbers show us in a series of, I want to say, 5 parts of our lives where different numeric energy is present with us, that shows us the lessons that we're meant to learn. And so our life contract, there are certain things, I love how you describe how some things are destiny charted. There are some things that we are meant to experience. Some of them are free will choices, but some of them are destiny charted. And the numbers, the numerology, the day and the year and the month that we were born, and our name, the numeric energy associated with the letters of our name, they all come together. God and the universe and spirit is so brilliant, because I love how you describe, Ivy, how your name was not originally Ivy. It was a different name, and your mom switched your name to Ivy, and look at who you are. You're one of your birthday number is a master number, and which is so connected to who you are. And with these pinnacle cycle numbers and period cycle numbers, if we're meant to go through something, let's say in the first third of our life, like between the time that we're born into maybe say our 20s or 30s, late 20s, early 30s, especially if it's something potentially difficult, especially if that person has a light worker or healer life contract, they might have a 1 in their the first third of their life. And that 1 energy is like the leader, the person who's like aggressively makes something happen, and is kind of like will push past whatever limitations I think that they might have. The number 4 representing the willingness and the ability to work and to do something pragmatically. That some of the internet, of course, like all of the numbers have high and low polarities, but the aspects of those numbers that allow for endurance and perseverance and the ability to push past things could be present with us during the first third of our life. But then let's say in the final third, once we're done, or the second third or the final third, or somewhere in between, once we're meant to let go of those parts of ourselves that were meant to be with us to serve us, the numeric energy with us in our pinnacle cycle, our pinnacle number or period cycle number could be a 2, which is relational. It could be 7, related to spirituality and introspective healing. It could be 11, which is like, I think one of like the most highly charged spiritual numbers, where it's like information comes to us at light speed. You know what I mean? With where we have little control over it. So all of it is connected, and what we need, we already have, especially with regard to our numerology, and it could have an impact and reflect how and why we were at a certain point in our lives, and how we're able to, on a turn on our heels and go in a different direction when we need to.
That's right. And amen to that. And don't we want to? Don't we want to continuously evolve, not just keep going around the mountain on one old lesson again and again and again? And Paul, if you could put this in the comments, because Danny's mentioning a couple different things. Knowing your numerology, for those of you that are tuning in and you're new to Roots Revival Interfaith, Danny is a numerologist. Our religion here is that we believe in intuitive intelligence, numerology, and astrology as the foundations of wisdom in the universe that give us guidance, not just to healing and what we're here to do, but our actual contract, what we're supposed to learn, who we're supposed to deal with. And it's so important to have an understanding of your number chart, of your astrological chart, or I do the life contract readings. So Paul, you should really put all that in the comments. If you guys aren't sure, what path you're supposed to be on, or if you've been struggling with some of the things we've been talking about here the last few weeks with this ego, this may be a time for you to take a good look at your path, at your purpose, at your numbers, at your stars and planets, and at your intuitive intelligence. It's everything. You understand this, you can understand anything. Do we have questions and comments coming in here?
No.
I just want to explain to people too at this point, if you have not already done so, sorry to cut you off, Paul. At this point, please post your prayer and healing requests, whether they be for yourself, someone else. If you guys are so inclined to leave donations, please do so at this time. And any questions or comments on the sermon today?
We have one that is from J Toot Sweets.
Okay.
Said the military people have a binder called a brag book of their awards and accomplishments. Much like, so as had me thinking was SPS. It's like a lot of times you need that praise to get to the next step. Like you need to say, okay, that's done. I can check it off. And half the time, if not 90% of the time, you're not going to get it from someone else. So saying it to yourself and validating that you did complete something, there's totally nothing wrong with that. Like putting it in other people's faces. Yeah, that's, a little bit bragging, but just to say, hey, I did this, I did a good job. I don't see there's anything wrong with that. You get the check, then you've done, and then you can move on and say, all right, this is complete.
And maybe we do need more bragging. How many people are out there posting all their dirty laundry and their baggage and their woes? How many people are out there posting like this amazing blessing happened to me, or I accomplished this thing, or I feel really great today? Maybe we do need more bragging. Get out from these old timers who just ground us into the dirt. And I think too, on his mention, Jay, on, the military, there's this brilliant mentality that comes along with that military training, right? It's out of the box thinking. And while it does its damage in some ways, when not properly used, when it goes high, it really goes high. And I love thinking on military longevity, the stamina level, and how you can come at things from different angles and find solutions in your life. And that idea that you have to examine, you're required to keep a trophy book, is a beautiful thing. And it matches universal law, where if you don't also, with every level up, with every major test, with every beating that we take, if we don't also develop in self-love, self-respect, self-acknowledgement, we can lose benefits. So it's a test in itself, whether or not you can do that.
Yeah, and if you take away like the positive aspects of the good things, it kind of makes them negative. And then you really don't notice that you're on the high end of the things, and then you just spiral back down.
Ooh, that's true.
So I guess, like you said, yeah, why can't we brag about it a little if we're doing the right thing? I don't know.
Right, encourage other people too, yeah.
And that's so it shows like the power of the connection of all of us, especially our connection to the ancestors and to spirit, but to all of us collectively as a community, as a beloved community. And what Paul and Ivy and the gentleman who shared about the military brag book is it kind of like feels like it relates to Nelson Mandela, the president of South Africa, 27 years in prison, who is responsible for ending apartheid in South Africa. And one of my favorite quotes where he says, "And as we let our own light shine, we consciously give other people permission to do the same. And as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." So it's just sometimes by sharing the wonderful things that we've done, it can sometimes be that last bit of inspiration for someone who might have been on the fence about doing something. And this is like related to life contract work too. When people, you always share how and teach how people have to consciously make the choice to fulfill what's in their life contract. But the thing is, when they do, it's everything. And sometimes when someone shares, hey, I accomplished this thing, I was able to do the thing I didn't think I could, that then allows for that next person to say, you know what, even though I'm fearful, I'm going to go for it and I'm going to do it. And that is, we need each other for that. So
Amen, right? Humans are the mouthpiece for God. And a big thing in the spiritual community has also become, if you look at Instagram and you look at Facebook, you know, so many of the memes and the posts are all about keep your accomplishments to yourself, keep your celebrations to yourself, hide everything. Like everyone's going to attack. If you don't, who cares? You got to let go of all that at some point and be like, I'm going to live, I'm going to shine, I'm going to support others in doing so. It is a good thing to do. You know, it's if we don't celebrate exactly what Paul said, you know, then we take what's good and we lower it and we just have what's bad and we never heighten it. You know, it's just like, what's the point? Like, seriously, what is the point of any of this? I love it.
It's joyless.
Well, yes. Yes. And it's suspicious. Mm-hmm. And that in itself is suspicious. You know, to say that people should be and should hide these things, that's a sign that something's very wrong and sickly there. Yeah.
I think that's like something old. I don't want to just strictly say like I think it's an old religious carryover.
Oh, well,
like,
it is.
You know, like, okay, you can't have joy unless it's through the church.
It's colonization. Yeah, it is. Like everywhere.
So anything that's positive that you could have on your own is seen as bad. And it's like, it's just stuck and it's just entrenched and gooey and yuck. And it's like, you know, I know personally, like taking compliments and stuff, I deflect those. Or if it's like, I don't post anything good that happens, it's like, I don't want to, you know, and it's just this holdover that I was raised with. And I don't, you know, and that's just carried. And it's like, why not like shine the light? Why not have fun? Why not make everybody happy because you're happy, you know? And that's the only way to do it. It's like, you know, shining a beacon and that'll light someone else's beacon and, you know, the message continues.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to look deeper at the things we think about this.
And when something that I've heard my mom and a couple of mentors say, and this is where like knowing the limit, knowing the balance, this balance is important when planning to do something. And I think when you teach us about free will and how sometimes outside factors can affect something, if like, especially during the creative process or the building process, if something is a bit more vulnerable while you're in the process of building it, my mom and folks would say, okay, keep it quiet until you're ready, until it's ready to go, until it's time to reveal it. Then share all you want, but until that point, you keep it quiet. And so finding that healthy balance between keeping things private among yourself and the folks who you're building with so that outside factors don't, and energy does not have an influence on it when it's in that vulnerable state, you know, like when the cake is still cooking, when the cake is still baking and we're waiting for it to fully bake and then cool. That's one thing. But then once it's ready, let that light shine for sure.
Yeah, and that's a big ego test in itself, because why do you want to share? Do you want to share to, you know, be hoity-toity and I'm better and this is what I have going on and look at me? Well, that's ego. Then you're coming from a place of fear and ego and low level. But if you want to share a piece of your information because you feel like it's time, it's going to help others, it's time to celebrate, then that's another thing. And that in itself, Danny, is a big ego test. Why do people share what they share? Why are we doing? Yeah, a lot of the things that we're doing. On that note, I just want, before we get to more questions and comments here, I just want to do a plug. Danny has published, if we could all give her a hand, a book that she kept hidden in the works for a while, A Prisoner's Humanity. And Danny, if you could tell them where they can get that.
Oh, Ivy, thank you so much. It can be found on Amazon.com and it's under my name, Danny Johnson. And it is a collection of 71 poems that illuminate and lift up the ways that prisoners are mistreated and tortured within the prison system. And there are specifically 71 poems in honor of the year 1971, when the prisoners within Attica prison had their uprising, when they fought to simply have toilet paper and soap and showers. And sometimes it's referred to as a riot, but it was an uprising. It was just fighting for their humanity. So that is the reason why there are 71 poems in the book.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Ivy.
I have goosebumps. Amazing. Amazing. Right on time today. Well, thank you, Danny, for being of service. All right. Well, look forward to getting this. I can't wait. I can't wait to read it.
We're going to get a copy autographed.
Oh, yes. We're going to get an autograph. Maybe you could do that for people, huh? Mail it out to, I don't know how that works. Maybe do book signing soon.
Anything for you too.
That would be awesome. So we have more questions and comments, or do we want to get into prayers at this point in closing?
We just have one more comment. That,
okay.
Well, a couple congratulations for Danny.
Yay.
Those are very nice. And Crystal was echoing about, taking, when you have done something really difficult and are excited by it, it can really inspire others.
Yes.
But it becomes bragging or a low vibration when it's overindulged in and pushed onto others. So, she's echoing that line, not to step over here, which is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I think that ultimately everything we go through is that original pain, that test, and then we're expected to process it, do the shadow work, battle the ego, and then we are supposed to be using it to assist others, to shine the light, to be of service, to the healing in the universe. And so we have to see everything that way, that the ultimate goal is to get it up to that point where we can share it. And we should be aware too of people who want to tell us, that it's bragging, it's excessive self-confidence long before it ever reaches that point. That says a lot about where they are. I think of all the injury done to women's self-esteem, that a proud woman, is something shameful that we should, never speak and never be comfortable with our bodies and bring that positivity. And that's the one thing that's kept us trapped and down, for so long in the patriarchy. So just even using that as a constant reference to remind yourself that, there's a whole other level up here that we need to get to. Let's start celebrating. Let's start shining. Let's bring others with us. It is time. Very exciting. We have prayers and healing requests here. Okay. Did you guys have any closing statements on this? Paul, Danny?
Well, one thing I'd like to share, Ivy, thank you so much for lifting up the book. I want to, when you said a little bit earlier that we are all the mouthpieces for God, just giving sincere appreciation for one of your mediumship students who recently graduated, Jill, who at the end of her at the end of her graduation, at the end of her culminating course, gave that extra push from my work guide and said, it's time for you to do this thing. So if she is with us, if she has the chance to join us, whether it be in person or later, just want to share a thank you to her, because we are all in this together, and just very grateful to her for that. And in speaking about and reflecting on ego, one of the things that we just love to lift up is that when we feel that we are ready to go in a different direction, and when we feel that it is time to transition out of a way that we have been, no matter for how long it may have been for, we have the right to change. We have the right to go in a different direction. And regardless of how we may have, who we may have been, how we may have processed or exhibited, or however we may have maneuvered or navigated the world, when we make the decision that we are ready to transition and level up, no one has the right to shame us for that. No one has the right to say, well, before you were like this and now you're like this. And I just encourage you, please stay on your journey. The only ones that matter are the ones who we really can't see with the naked eye. So continue on your journey. And this is where character versus appearances come in, because regardless of what anyone might feel or think about your willingness, you accepting what you want to, how you want to transform and what needs to be healed out, those who are meant to walk on your path with you will be there.
Yep.
And those who, if they are unable to understand and accept the healing process that you're in and the shadow work that you're doing, then as Ivy always says, as with every stop, another person has to get off the bus or the train or whatever vehicle they might be on, another person has to get off. So continue on.
I was just going to say, we have a free mini class on this called Fighting the Dark. So you guys could check that out. Paul could put that in the comments, please. But it's exactly what Danny's talking about. Every new level, there's a new devil. Every time the bus stops, somebody's got to get off. In order for a new door to open, another door has to shut. That's how it's going to go. And every time you want to fight your ego and evolve, you are going to have people around you who want to stop that progress and keep you down where they are. And you're going to, eventually find that you're evolving beyond them. And whether that's boundary setting or that's completely leaving, that's something you'll need to figure out. But you also want to make sure you're not doing that to yourself. Don't be your own inner shame. Don't be your own guilt. Don't be your own, nasty grandma SPS. Don't do that to yourself. Be mindful about your thoughts. And when you're in a period where you're battling something like this, make sure it's not you being your own toxic inner dialogue. We have enough of that all around us. And just playing off of what you said too, Danny. Yes, so true. Like when we remove those people or set boundaries on those people, we stop allowing that to influence us. The right people show up, right? Members of our soul tribe show up and they just get replaced just like that. You can't see it till you do it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like Jill. Hopefully she tunes in for this because, there she was, a graduating baby student who was just bold enough to be of service and say to Danny, Spirit's saying you need to publish this book. This was last week. And Danny went out and just did it immediately. And there it is. Okay. Like the things that we give can alter the world in a huge way. This is really where it's at. It's not super complicated. That's awesome. Okay, so I know we have prayer and healing requests. If we don't have any other comments, questions coming in, do you want to lead prayer tonight then?
Sure.
Okay, so we just want to invite everyone to be involved in the prayer and healing ceremony here for each other. And for those of you who tune into this later, whether it be here on YouTube at Ask Ivy or wherever you can get a podcast, we will be praying over your prayer requests continuously. So feel free to even post them later if you need to. Okay.
Okay, we're going to start here for Alex, who is looking for healings for both her friend Dima and her grandmother, who are both battling cancer. Lift that up for Alex, Dima, and her grandmother and their families. The strength and healing for this fight. Let's claim that. We have one from Destiny, who's looking for healing for her sisters. They're going through some tough times. So let's get some healing for Destiny, sisters, their family. Get through these tough times. Give them their strength. And claim that one. And we have one from Crystal. It's looking for prayers for the victims of the recent string of shootings and peace and healing to heal from these tragedies. So I'm going to lift that up. Peace, healing. Claim this for everybody involved.
Okay, and I just want to add to that prayers over everyone who is battling their ego, who's gotten so deep into the rut, is so far out at sea that they can't see the solutions anymore. And for those who are being manipulated by whether it be parents, okay, or an oppressive system in society, okay, or whatever holds them down, even, money, any kind of restrictive force. I pray that these people find the strength to get out from under the boot of their oppressors and to hit that third level of development with the ego, where they can not only do the healing for themselves, but also give it out to heal others. and not be afraid. Did you guys want to add anything else?
I'd like to lift up Nancy, whose brother-in-law is toward the end of his life dealing with COVID, lifting up her family, who are all in New York City right now, praying for their healing, for their comfort, and for their peace.
Yes.
This one is for We Are One. It's looking for clarity and direction, as well as healing for her mom. So let's look this up for healing, direction, clarity. Let's claim that for We Are One and family. And Cat needs healing. Always very negative and thinking the bad is going to happen. So change in direction. For Cat, let's lift that up. Get her on the right path. Clarity and positivity. Claim that for Cat.
Amen. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope this brings you many blessings. If you need a midweek prayer or healing session, Paul will be leading those. They're usually either Wednesday or Thursday nights. So stay tuned here on Ask Ivy on TikTok, Ask Ivy on YouTube. And if you guys want to go back and rewatch this, it'll be here on YouTube under Roots Revival, on the Roots Revival playlist at Ask Ivy here, or anywhere that you receive a podcast. Thank you so much, Danny and Paul and Spirit and everyone for being with us tonight. Everybody take care. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. See you next week. Thank you so much.